Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast to make soap out of squirrel fat. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with my friend, publisher of Time Comix, Jon Westhoff. Jon, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. All right, so since this is technically the first time we're meeting, and I think we got introduced by our mutual good friend, Chad Perkins.
Never say
Um,
that sentence again.
yeah, he wouldn't appreciate me talking so highly of him. I'm sorry, Chad. He's probably not going to listen to this, but that's okay. So I like to start things off with an icebreaker question. So, icebreaker question for you today. If you could listen to only one band or artist for the rest of your life, who would it be?
I feel like you asked that on one of the shows I listened to, and I thought I was prepared until exactly right now when you asked it, and now my mind has gone blank.
So
Well,
you're
my
listening to other episodes. That's awesome. I appreciate
my
that.
no problem. My favorite band is Primus, so automatically I want to say that. But I think the band. It's weird to say my favorite band is I think Primus, but the band I adore the most, who really opened me up to so much more music, who I don't think I could live without, is the Talking Heads. Which is
Oh,
weird
nice.
because we're here today to talk about a heavy metal comic, but yeah, I just adore David Byrne and the Talking Heads. I could listen to them endlessly. Um, I don't think if I don't really think they have an album that I don't like. Whereas Primus in their later years is it's fallen off a bit for me. Is it still good but not great.
That's
But
fair.
yeah, I'll go with Talking Heads.
That works. Well, and that's okay. We're here to talk about a heavy metal comic, but we don't, you can find inspiration from the weirdest places. And if, your favorite bands or not necessarily favorite band, but a band that you like listening to is not heavy metal, whatever, it works.
Absolutely.
I would say for mine, like you, I wasn't always super into heavy metal. I used to listen to a lot. I used to always listen to rock, but not anything super heavy. The heaviest thing what got me into listening to heavy music was Metallica, and I get Metallica's not super heavy, but that was my gateway into heavy stuff because one day I found Killswitch Engage, and I've been locked in ever since, man. I love them so much, and I could just listen to them for. There's a lot of times I'll just go to their Spotify page and just hit go and just listen. It's so good.
Oh, I love it. I have a hard time with Killswitch because I just love Alive or Just Breathing so much. I,
So
I
good.
I always want to listen to that, and then like my buddy Ray, he loves all their albums, and I have trouble moving past that one because I just want to listen to that all the time.
That's a good one. That's so good. And so that means you're a Jesse fan, probably.
Yeah, oh for sure. I mean
Yeah.
I like Howard, and that era was cool, but to me it was you know it's like, well, we could talk about Metallica too. I feel like it's two different eras of the bands,
Yeah.
even though obviously the core of Killswitch was the same.
Yeah,
And that's cool, that you can do that over a long career.
for sure. I think I'm the opposite. I'm more of a Howard guy, but I mean, I don't have a problem with Jesse, but I love them both. So that's good and I know there's a lot of people that are very split, either team Jesse or team Howard, but I play for both teams.
I mean, I could see how you could be that way for like Van Halen because that
Yeah.
changed, but Killswitch was still a Killswitch. But I still, to me, I had my core time was Jesse and his short time before he left, and then the Howard era. I wasn't, well, just wasn't at the time listening as much. So I just kind of still have that affinity for Jesse. And that again, that first album just at the time was just
It's so good.
it's one of my favorite ever.
Yep, for sure. All right, so Fueled by Weird, the concept, you probably heard this already since you've listened to other shows. It's basically, the stuff that you're into that makes you who you are, that makes you the weirdo that you are. So let's go ahead and let's have you tell me some of the stuff that you're into that feels you're weird.
Well, this is an audio podcast, so in case you decide to use the video portion here, if you were looking, you can see it piled behind me in my messy office. Um, yeah, I mean, my grandma took me to the comic shop at about 11 years old. I saw Amazing Spider-Man. I'm 99% sure it was 332, where Venom's jumping right at the cover, Eric Larson.
Yeah.
And I was just hooked there ever since. I was like, oh, these things come out monthly. Oh, and there's older issues. Why is this 332? And what happened? Oh, Venom's in 331. I gotta track that one down. And it just that collecting that the cool villains and stuff, just that just really made me a nerd for life, really.
Nice.
That, and I come from a family of Disney nerds, so I've always been watching, even though they're very popular, people would say that, but we've always been heavy into Disney movies, animation. Um, love the Pixar stuff, but yeah, again, in the background here, I have a lot of Star Wars stuff, a lot of
I
comic
was gonna
books.
say,
Yeah, those were my heavy influences early on. Comics and Star Wars were pretty big.
nice. And yeah, we are audio and video if we have, decent video. So we'll definitely be putting this on YouTube. So
Thanks.
it'll be cool to see all the stuff behind you. My basement is a mess, so I'm in Ron Swanson's office right now. So there's the
See,
picture of the breakfast food right there.
I should probably do that too when I go on these interviews because it is kind of embarrassing. But you know what? That's life.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, mine's there. I don't have anything super exciting right now. It's still kind of a work in progress, but it'll get there and we'll have some fun stuff. All right. So you're a comic book writer. And I've read not a lot of your stuff yet. I finished Drumsticks of Doom. Incredible. I need to get some more of your stuff because I'm very interested in On the Stack. As a fan of Magic the Gathering that I haven't played in years, but I really want to read your magazine about that. What got you into writing in the first place?
Well, somewhat of the theme of Drumsticks of Doom, and thank you for checking it out, and thank you for the wonderful review. I definitely gonna
Yeah,
hit you up to steal a pull quote for a future issue.
please.
But
I'd be
I
happy to.
a lot of it was I played in a band for many years since I was 14. I started playing bass, then switched over to the drums when I was about 15,
Nice.
and I was in a band forever. 10, 15 years. Just usually, my closest friends, we were, we kind of reconfigured the band, and some people would come in and out over time, but it was really just a way to be creative with friends. We always did other creative things together. We made, silly YouTube videos and comedy stuff. And we were always like, creating and doing stuff like that together. Well, as you get older, you know, family comes along, you're not with friends as much. You maybe not the dream, so to speak, of being in a band, long term is starting to die down.
Yeah.
I honestly was like, I think I want to do something else creative. And I was on this great, amazing forum called the 11 O'Clock Comics Forum, a great forum for the podcast 11 O'Clock Comics. And I just kind of threw it out there. Unbeknownst to one of my now best friends, a stranger at the time, Bob Garnellis, responded and said, "Yeah, if you got some ideas, let's work together." And we've worked together for 15 years since. He's co-created tons of projects for Part-Time Comics to this day. So it was really just I just wanted to try. I never really had that desire as a kid. I was never, I was always more into the art and never, half the time didn't even know who was writing it unless it was the artist also writing it.
Yeah.
And then as I got older and I was still reading comics, I was like, I've written some stuff before, some comedy stuff, and I've written music, and I want to give this a try. So that was really how it started. I was never like a lifelong writer, or never, somebody who always had notebooks full of things. That was really my older brother. He would always get the blank pre-made comics and draw his own comics in it. He was a huge Rob Liefeld guy, so everybody
It's
had
awesome.
big swords and big muscles and everything. I was like, never. That was just not me. And
Yeah.
again, until I got older and I saw some other people, and I realized, well, I think I like comics. I like the medium, and I think it has the lowest threshold to get into, right? And
Sure.
I was like, give it a try, and here I am, 15 years later, and dozens and dozens of comics written under my belt.
That's awesome. And like you mentioned, you've got, several comics under your name now. And I did my homework on you. We've got Depowered, Up and Let's Go, The Simpsons tribute, On the Stack, Child Possession Services, Bulletproof Chicken, and the one we're here to talk about today, Drumsticks of Doom. So for all these amazing comics, including Bulletproof Chicken, that one stuck out just by the name alone. I'm very excited to look into that one. How do you come up with the ideas for all this stuff?
Most of the stuff, again, being a big fan of The Simpsons and kind of, a lot of those irreverent comedy shows and comedians like that. A lot of it is whatever is really funny. Like the Bulletproof Chicken literally was Bob Gar, who I mentioned, and I were in Harold's Chicken Shack here in Chicago. And Harold's Chicken Shack sometimes is in neighborhoods where they need to protect their staff, and there was some bulletproof glass there, and we were eating chicken, and he said, "Hey, it's Bulletproof Chicken," and I said that's our next comic, and then that was at C2E2 2011 or something like that, and then the next year we had it written and out. So a lot of times it's just
Awesome.
you just go with that exciting idea, which again, coming from a music background, I was never the most proficient musician, but I just love that spark that you get when you write music together in a room with people. And sure, a lot of us could be studied in notes and write a beautiful sonnet by ourselves. I can't, but some people can. But there's something about that visceral part of writing music. And I try to do that with comics too. It usually starts with a scene, just something pops in my head, and then you got to build out from there. So Bulletproof Chicken really was, again, it just a funny joke between a friend, and then it kind of launched from there. And that's how a lot of my stuff starts. And I'm like, oh crap, I actually, if I'm going to do this, there has to be like a story and a reason for people to actually read it. So I guess I should probably expand it a little more.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know some of those impulse ideas that you would normally like, no, this is a dumb idea, we're not going to do this. If you just embrace that idea, it usually turns into the most awesome stuff, like your Bulletproof Chicken idea. Or like I was reading a book by Felicia Day where she was talking about something about a dinosaur in a tuxedo, and I'm like, that sounds so dumb. And I was like, wait a minute, what about dinosaur in a tuxedo? Like that's James Bond as a dinosaur. 00 Dino.
Sounds
That's
good to me.
amazing. That's amazing, right? And like even going back to talking about Chad again, he mentioned that he got a letter from his homeowners association, and then we started coming. He thought it was stupid what they wanted him to do. And then we started coming up with an idea that what if HOA is actually a cover for like aliens who crash landed on the planet Earth, and the homeowners association is just like a secret way to like keep them undercover, like kind of like a the relocation program that the FBI does.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of spun off into a crazy thing. So yeah, those ideas that start out as something ridiculous, if you just embrace them and go with them, they end up being some really awesome stuff.
I love that. Like one that pops to mind is Metal Shark Bro.
Yes.
By Bob France and
I love
Kevin
that
Cuff.
book. I love that book.
And I apologize, I forget they're amazing artists, but
Walter.
I feel like comics, because really, especially if you can draw yourself, you could come up with an idea right now as we sit, and by tomorrow have the comic. Yeah. And I think people should embrace that more, because it's one of the few mediums you can do that in, right? You could probably do that in television. There's going to be so many edits and all this, the cost and everything. Like, yeah, comics we should really embrace more, and that is kind of part of the reason the title of the company is an X Comics. Because I love the indie comics scene, and I love the underground comics and the people who staple their own books, and I want some of that in part-time comics still. I enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, to grab onto that stuff, because some of everyone's trying to do a superhero book. It seems like everyone needs to do like this is my superhero book. They want to do my superhero book. I'll go and do all the crazy fun stuff. It's like, why not just do the fun stuff? Like, not everyone has to have a superhero book,
Right. And not every book. I mean, I definitely respect, one of my favorite writers, Jeff Lemire. I mean, he has such well thought out stories. You can tell he goes through the details. But again, comics is a lot. You can change. You can write 12 pages and then change the story based on what you feel with the characters. And I get a lot of that from the art. When I get art in, I'm very prone to change the script and let the artist know, that character looks so cool. He needs more time, or she needs more time. That happens all the time too. And I think, again, comics is a medium you can embrace that in. So why not?
Definitely agree. All right. So Drumsticks of Doom, issues 1 through 3 are out now. Issue 4 is on Kickstarter right now. You can also pick up the other 3 issues as well. Is that number 4?
Here's number 3. Number 4, we need your help. Get it out there. So it hasn't printed yet, but yeah, 3 issues are out so far in a little over a year and a half. Nice. I think Dan and I have been working on it for about 2 years. I think I approached him about it. We tried to pitch it around a little bit, didn't work out. But yeah, we've had 3 successful Kickstarters and off to a strong start so far.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us, for the people who are unfamiliar with Drumsticks of Doom, let's talk a little bit about it.
So the short pitch for Drumsticks of Doom is: what if Black Sabbath, not the Beatles, became the most popular band in the world, and thus the universe was changed forever, musically and otherwise? But our main antagonist, Lana, just wants to play indie music in a heavy metal world. When she's thrust, she finds a magical pair of drumsticks, and she's thrust into a circle pit to keep metal on the top of the charts. So it is very much, that reluctant hero story of she just wants to play music behind the scenes and live her life, and she comes across this magical pair of drumsticks. Really, again, started as a kind of just that thought of, drumsticks are like wands. What if a drumstick was kind of magic, and then kind of had to build the story from there.
And that's a world I definitely wouldn't mind living in. A world where Black Sabbath's the biggest band in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that'd be great. So,
which, if the universe was just, would be the case, right?
Right. So, you had mentioned that, drumsticks are kind of like wands, and you kind of built the story from there, which is kind of a cool idea. When did you come up with the idea of writing a music book? Like, how did you come up with the idea?
Well, it actually started probably about 10 years ago, where I met the artist who I should mention, my co-creator on the book, Dan Doherty, essential to this book. I and Bob Goranellis, again, at the time, were running a company called King Bone Press, and we looked around, and one of our close friends, Wendy Freeman, she was in a band, and she was like, we know so many people in the comics industry who were in bands, like we should do a book. And then the name comes in your mind. Oh, it'll be an anthology about bands. It'll be a bandthology. So we made Bandthology, the music anthology, and she recruited a lot of the people who I still work with today and still am friends with. And then Bob and I and Ray Regner and just so many awesome comic creators. Again, a lot of us came through music, or also had music very heavily in our lives. So we did 3 volumes of that. It was, one of our biggest successes early on for the company I was with at the time, King Bone Press. Dan, at the time, I did not really know him in the comic scene. Wendy introduced us. His story in the book was called Beast in Me, and it was about himself at a younger time when he played a show at the Metro in Chicago, and he kind of made this anthropomorphized beast that was inside him after he played that show, and that excitement. And if you've ever been in a band, you know what that's like. You're always kind of chasing that dragon, so to speak, if you play like a big show, or you want to, or you go see other bands and you're like, oh, I want to be up there so bad. And his story was just 6 pages. First off, it was like the most beautiful black and white art, and that story just really stuck with me. And I really wanted to work with Dan since then, and Dan's, before then and since then, it's done tons of comics, and he's an amazing artist. And I had the seed of an idea, again, of this woman who finds these magic drumsticks. And I kind of sat on it for a long time, and I built the story a little bit more. Okay, a werewolf kind of attacks her at practice, and then it kind of grew from there. Well, why did he attack her? And then when I finally had enough of a story, I finally approached Dan to do it. So it really started, about a decade ago. I was really inspired a lot by books like Scott Pilgrim. There's a book from Magnetic Press called Doom Boy, which I'm always enthralled by those comics that can take the feeling of music and put it into a comic, which is a soundless medium. And that always just fascinated me. And again, I wasn't really confident enough early on to take that leap, but I knew if I did it, I needed a co-creator, an artist who understood music. And Dan isn't in a band. He's a gigging musician to this day. He's actually supposed to play tonight. He has a successful solo band. So I knew I needed somebody who was an artist and understood that side. And I'm so grateful that Dan was able to do it. So it was really the collaboration of Bandthology and meeting Dan, a decade or so ago, that really sparked me to want to do my own music themed book.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Scott Pilgrim. I've been listening to episodes of my old podcast from like 10 years ago, and I think I mentioned Scott Pilgrim on almost every episode. And it's so good. And like you say, it's a book about music, but you can't really hear it because it's a comic book. So when the movie came out and Beck was, the guy who wrote all of Sex Bob-omb's music, I'm like, that fits so perfect. I couldn't think
It
of a better
does, and
person.
I've only watched the movie a couple times, and I do like it a lot. I think it's one of the
Yeah,
best comic adaptations. But yeah, something about that original, Brian Lee O'Malley,
yeah,
black and white. That just the fact I just love when like they're just like we're just in a band, and that wasn't the core of the story, but was a key
yeah.
part of the story, and I love that. And there's several other ones that I've read
Oh yeah,
along the years, but I just love music in comics. It's just I don't know. It's just something that I'm definitely a mark for. So there's been
yeah.
and since I kind of had the seed for this idea, maybe I waited too long because it seems like everybody else is having the same feeling because there's about 100 books that have come out in the last,
Yeah.
you know, what is it? The Roadie from Tim Seeley and Murder Falcon and all these,
Oh,
cool books. And I'm
Mur-
like, man, I guess I
Murder
waited a little too long. I could have led the trend.
Murder Falcon is so good. And you mentioned Mark. Does that mean you're a wrestling fan living in Chicago?
I wouldn't say that I am a continuing. I definitely had my era of wrestling, Stone Cold Rock era of Raw,
Sure.
but I would say I'm in recovery.
Fair enough. And you had mentioned black and white comics. I love the fact that I didn't expect yours to be black and white. Um, I love that it's black and white though. It works so much better for, I think if it was a color book, I think it would be a much different book. Um, just with it being black and white, I think everything popped a lot more, especially, when the demon came out of Lana. Um, I really, really like that. That was a good choice to go black and white.
I appreciate you saying that. That's always a tough decision in comics because we know um, there is a stigma. People
Yeah.
like their colored books, but at first, part of it was um, again Dan's original story that he wrote was in black and white for Banthology, and that series
Yeah.
continued to be black and white. I've worked with other artists like Bob Gar and others in black and white. I love black and white art. I don't know what it is about it that your brain just kind of computes it differently
Yeah, it kind of gives
without the
that
color.
old throwback feel kind of to like, the comic strips from the newspaper.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course I love Calvin and Hobbes and all those too.
Yeah,
So, um, but I approached him about it, and he was like, "Well, I have a colorist in mind if you're interested." And I said, "Okay," and then part of it is, of course, budget wise, it's like, well, cost control is a little better
yeah,
with black and white art. But again, Dan also did a series called Bob Howard Plumber of the Unknown, which is about a plumber who comes across like mythical creatures and things while he plumbs. And again, I just really think of Dan's art in black and white. He's done way more in color now, but I just was very focused on I want to see Dan draw in black and white. And I'm so glad we did because after he turned in those first, 4 or 5 pages, I was like, okay, yeah, we made the right choice. We're going with this. And of course, black and white art just really feels like it fits heavy metal, right?
yeah, for sure. I agree. So with this one, this will finish up the story. What do we have coming up after that? Like, how do you have like a certain, number of issues in mind to wrap up the entire story of Drumsticks of Doom? Is it just as many as you can do? Like, what's your plan for the future of Drumsticks of Doom?
Well, it's definitely the idea is to do 3 arcs, 9 to 10 issues, so 3 or 4 issues each. The first arc was planned as 3, and again, after seeing some of the characters and Dan's art, it definitely it already ballooned into 4. So don't quote me on that. The next arc is planned for
Sure.
3 issues, and will probably be 4 too because Dan is amazing. But
Okay.
um, yeah, so 9 to 12 issues was kind of the run. It definitely has a 3 arc phase to it. And I think when the next one comes out, people will kind of get where we're going with it because this was kind of her beginning. How she's thrown into the story, and then the next, you'll kind of get the idea, and then where it's headed at the end. But it's definitely in our scene we call it a maxi series. There's other stories to tell within there, and some one shots or cool things I would like to do if we get the support and if Dan's able to continue with the book. And but for now, it's definitely planned to be 3 kind of self-contained arcs.
So you definitely have an end where you want to end up planned
Yeah,
out for that.
yeah,
Okay.
and not every series do I come out or every issue that I write do I come with a definitive ending. I don't think this one has an exact this is exactly what will happen, but I have that scene in my head of how it's going to end and where it's going and why she needs to kind of go through this arc. Um, or everyone in the story hopefully
Yeah.
needs to go through their arcs. So this one definitely, I have an idea where it's going. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely lots of potential for spin-off stories because I mean, just off the top of my head, I would love to see the origin of where the pet alligator came from. And I'd love to see more of, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but the guy who runs the music shop.
Domenico, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see more of that guy, just kind of to see how he kind of ended up where he is. I don't want to say too much, 'cause I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't read it yet, but I'd love to see more with him. He was a really cool character.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. He was definitely, he was just someone she was passing by in that scene when it was originally written. And again, once I saw Dan's art, I'm like, oh, this guy's in the book. This is, he needs a bigger part. I just like the
Yeah,
way he drew him, and then I kind of thought of his background because Dan and I really we started with the first, I don't know, was 8 pages was supposed to be a pitch for the
yeah,
series. So we sat on that for a while. So that gave me time to kind of percolate, and us to think about the characters. And so that original scene, with her, and that is available on Kickstarter. So we're not spoiling anything. You can see the first, 10 pages on the Kickstarter.
yeah.
That first part was really the start of the story. And yeah, again, you don't always have, especially those kind of side and background characters. You got to let them come to you a little bit, how they interact with the main character, so to speak. And that he's definitely an example of that. And I definitely have an idea for a spinoff for him.
Nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, once this Kickstarter ends, what's next from Part-Time Comics?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Bulletproof Chicken because that is definitely probably the easiest comic to sell that I've ever been a part of. And a lot of people, especially a few of my closest friends, keep asking, when is it coming back? So Bulletproof Chicken this fall will make his triumphant and hopefully
Man,
final return after 10 years.
awesome.
For the 10-year anniversary, we're going to do one final issue, and then hopefully, if that does well, be able to collect all 3 issues into trade because it's only 2 issues right now. We've had those for a while, and finally, talked with Bob, and we have a way we kind of want to wrap up where we want to go with it. It's still going to be crazy and over the top and bizarre story, but I hope people enjoy it. So that's coming out this fall. You mentioned as well, Depowered. That series is coming to a conclusion, also with issue 3. My co-creator and artist Ronaldo Lay is finishing that as we speak.
Nice.
So that is coming to a conclusion as well. And the return of another series co-created by Bob Arnellis, Child Possession Services, will have its 2nd issue this fall as well. We tentatively plan to do them all at once, as we did with the last Kickstarter, where we did multiple issues at once because, I'm a masochist and I like to torture myself with logistical issues and trying to figure out,
Sure.
finances and stuff. So
Yeah.
what the hell? They're all going to be done about the same time. Let's just put them out into the world at the same time and save myself from having to run, 3 separate campaigns.
That works. But yeah,
So
definitely.
3 more issues, and then if we can get that across the line with Drumsticks, there is part of the campaign is a stretch goal to see the series continue sooner rather than later. Part of that is a big part of this is to keep Dan's a full-time working artist. We got to keep him employed. So if we reach the $6,000 stretch goal, our hope is to do the trade paperback in late 2023, early 2024, followed by the next issue of that series.
Sweet. And with Bulletproof Chicken, the new Kickstarter, we can catch up on old issues, yeah?
Catch up on old issues. Yeah, well, we have all the old issues. I will say I have a limited supply of the Bulletproof Chicken Nuggets, our anthology series we did with it. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to get those out. Hopefully to new readers.
Awesome.
Again, that's been one of our biggest successes over the last decade.
Yeah, that one and On the Stack are definitely 2 that I mean, I want to read all your stuff, but those are the 2 definitely that I'm looking forward to catching next, hopefully. Very cool. Well, yeah, when you're ready to go, let us know. We'll be happy to, have you back on. We can do some more stuff to help get the word out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So, final thoughts. What's some advice you'd give for some up and coming creators, some aspiring creators, or maybe someone who has the drive to create that just hasn't started yet?
Well, again, especially if we're talking about comics, I know this is probably a cliche at this point, but just do it, right? Write something, draw it yourself, even if you don't, you quote unquote don't know how to draw. Go through that process, because that, actually until recently, I had not really done any art. And for Up and Let's Go, I did a short story in there myself. And I think that's very important for anyone, even if you end up just focusing on writing, to go through that process. You have a lot of empathy for your co-creators. If you draw, color, letter, print, publish your own book, if you go through that whole process, again, I think that will help you as a creator in general. So just do it. Even if it looks bad in the end, nobody has to see it. You show it to a couple close friends, and then you go from there. And my other advice to people is always start small. I know that probably gets said a lot too, but I meet a lot of co-creators, and bless their heart, when they come in, balls to the walls, and they're like, I got 100-issue epic, I'm gonna be the next Walking Dead, next 100 Bullets. If you haven't done it yet, just focus on a short story, a one shot. Have that nice self-contained. Then you can kind of analyze it when it's done. That's always my biggest piece of advice. Now, again, I respect people who go in. I definitely started with a much longer story, and it kind of lost its way because I wasn't focused enough as a creator yet. And, that was kind of a false start to my career as a writer too. So that's something I always like to tell people. Just start with a 6 to 12 page story, see what you got in the end. And then if it's something you like, you can always expand it into more. But, do a beginning, middle, and end story, and get through that first. And then start working on your 100-issue epic.
That's good advice. I mean, I know personally I've been guilty of, I'll have an idea and I'll think of all the potential steps ahead and where I'd like it to be. And then sometimes you can get frustrated because where you want to be is not where you are. And you have such a long way to go to get to where you want to be, but you can't get there without doing all of the little steps to get to there first. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, and maybe that is, I'm a social worker by day, so maybe that's the social worker in me. Encourage. Doesn't mean you give up on your dreams. I would never discourage someone from saying go for it.
Yeah.
But if you set smaller, more attainable goals that will motivate you more, it's just proven, right?
Yeah.
If I break up Drumsticks of Doom into 3 arcs and I only get through the first arc, I have that goal. I did it. I have this awesome book that Dan and I created. That is something. But if I say, oh, I never got to the next 50 issues, well, again, you're still a comic creator. You're still out there creating. If you only set your goal so hyper focused on one ending, then you're bound for disappointment, right?
Yeah. I mean, and if you want to be a writer, like we're going to go back to writing because, I'd like to consider myself a writer too. I haven't done a lot lately, but if you find that you don't have enough time to get writing in, but you want to be a writer, even if you were to do like 50 words a day or just something crazy like that, if you do 50 words a day every day for a week, that's at least you're doing it. You're, like you said, making the small steps. You're taking these small little pieces and making it a lot more manageable that, after, a month, you're going to have something that you wouldn't have had a month ago.
Absolutely. Again, don't sell yourself short, but if my only goal is to play in Metallica, that's not going to happen. I'll guarantee that. At 42 years old, they got a lifelong drummer. I'm not going to reach that goal, so I'll disappoint myself. But if my goal is to play drums, then what does that mean? I can play in, cover bands. I can play on my own. I can teach my kids. So again, just being satisfied with that part of it. I think people would have a happier life if they accepted those small steps. You're still doing what you want to do.
Yeah, I agree for sure. All right, well, let's go ahead and give you a chance to plug your stuff. Let's plug the Kickstarter. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so the Kickstarter, search Drumsticks of Doom on Kickstarter. Hopefully we picked a unique enough name. Things should come up there. Or Part-Time Comix with an X again on Kickstarter will come up to our page. You can follow along, for future Kickstarters. We're also Part-Time Comix again with an X on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for some reason is part_time_comics. But again, if you search Part-Time Comix with an X, you'll find us on all that stuff. My most frequent social media is Twitter. So if you want to see me talk about the aforementioned Magic the Gathering, that's mostly what I do on Twitter. So, come on there and let's talk about some Magic cards and sling some spells.
Very cool. And some housekeeping on our side. We'd like to thank our sponsor, W Energy. W is formulated to give you focus and energy with no jitters or crash. Go to w.gg, use the code Geek Network for 10% off your order. Also, another new sponsor is Mammoth Headwear. I'm wearing right now. One size fits big. They're hats made specifically for dudes or ladies with large heads.
Hey,
I've always had an issue with not getting hats to fit, and this is 3 notches. That's huge. That's incredible. I've never had a hat fit so well.
it's something I hadn't even thought about. But yeah, that is an underexplored market because I definitely have a big head too, and my son
Yeah,
is approaching even bigger than mine, so he'll never find a hat if they don't
dude,
they don't come out.
I have snapbacks I've never been able to wear, even with extenders or the duct tape. It's never worked. Like I said, this is 3 notches and it fits. It fits a little bit too big, so it's been incredible. So you can actually go to their site, mammothheadwear.com, use the code Geek Network for 10% off. So it's pretty awesome there. tpublic.com, look up Geek Network Entertainment for all shirts for this show, for other shows, and for other nerdy goodness there. Geek-network.com is the website. Find all sorts of nerd news there. Geeks AZ on Twitter and Instagram. Geek Network on Facebook. IMCD is weird on Instagram. The music for the show is by Polygon Horizon. Check them out on Bandcamp. They're great. Nintendo core. It's Nintendo music mixed with rock. It's incredible. It's a great song. The logos for the show are done by my friend Chris Chandler and Mike Belcher. You can find them on Instagram and Twitter at Chandler Doma on Instagram and Twitter, and Mike W Belcher 1 on Twitter, and Mike W_Belcher on Instagram. Like you mentioned, Instagram likes to do lots of underscores. I don't know why. It's pretty wild over there. And if you like the show, please leave a review. Tell your friends. Word of mouth is our best friend, and it's very much appreciated. And remember, kids, to embrace the things that fuel your weird and always geek responsibly. John, thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir.